All right. Well, welcome everyone. I am excited to be here with you tonight. My name is Quinn Lindsay, and I am an educator and also a life coach. And so I'm excited to get to offer some of these workshops to you. And we're going to do a few different workshops over the next few weeks to just hopefully help to um, kind of troubleshoot some of the areas that we have
Hello.
being in online education. So, a little bit about me. I have been teaching in the classroom for 19 years now. Um, one of those years was in brick and mortar, and then the rest of those years have been in an online setting. And so I have worked in this online setting for quite a while now. And it has really been an awesome opportunity, but it's a different setting than what many of us are used to as parents. We didn't have the opportunity, most of us. Some of us may be young enough that we had a little bit of online school, but wasn't the way that we did schooling. So it really is an awesome way for our students to be able to school, but sometimes it can bring some challenges with it tonight. So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about communication, especially for parents in the online classroom, not only with teachers and other staff, but also with your own students. Because I don't know about you, but it definitely brings out a different meaning when you're working with your own kids at home. Again, I am also a mom to three kids, and so the whole mom parent education thing can be tough. So let me ask a question before we get started. You guys can feel free to use your mics or to comment in the chat box. But how many years have your students been in online school or in a hybrid program where they're part-time online, part-time in the classroom? Give me an idea of how long your students have been doing this. Okay, Haley says 1 year, 1 month. Okay, Jessica, you guys are just getting started then. Okay, same thing, Carrie, just getting started.
I have no clue what's going on.
Okay, first time, 1 year. Awesome. Okay, 7 months. So everybody so far that's commented, you're still relatively new to the online setting. Okay. So with that being said, what are some of the struggles you have either had or maybe foresee being in an online environment? Okay, lots of you just getting started. That's exciting. And hopefully some of these things will help. Okay, so doing both public and online school. So you're kind of in a mix there. Okay. Okay, so yeah, what do you see as maybe some challenges, struggles with communication? Okay, finding where the actual grades are. Okay. Yes, if you've been to other online schools or sometimes even changed platforms, that can be confusing. Haley, keeping your student engaged is huge. Yes, and we are going to talk about that. Oh, I don't have my calendar right in front of me, but we do have another one of these sessions. Actually, it is our next session, March 24th, that we're going to talk about motivation and some tools to help to do that. Okay, yep, just trying to get started and finding the work to do. Okay, yeah, attendance. Okay, keeping your son focused. Okay, all of those things are very valid concerns and definitely things that you're trying to do as a parent and a learning coach to help, and teachers are trying to do. And in the midst of that, we have this space in between us that sometimes it can be hard to communicate and to work through some of these things. So today, I want to talk specifically about communication in the school setting, like I said, with your teachers, other school staff, and also your students, because this has changed if this kind of your first time being in a learning coach role. All right, let me admit a few more people in. Welcome to all of you that are just joining. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay before we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so our goal for today really is just to help you as parents to reduce conflict, to build trust with your teachers, and create healthier communications with all of us involved. This really is a huge team effort in an online setting. If your students have been in brick and mortar schools before, you know that it definitely is teamwork, but it's a little bit different once you have your students at home and working that way. So that's our goal for today. All right. So many of you are brand new here. Could be your first year. I think the longest I've seen somebody comment was 2 years, but I want you to think about the last time you communicated with one of your students' teachers.
Hmm.
Did it feel collaborative and productive, or did it feel stressful?
Little stressful.
Okay, Michael says a little stressful. Why did it feel stressful, Michael?
Because the issues he was having in the school, at the high school, he
Okay.
just had so many issues going on that he wasn't functioning like he should be.
Okay, so a few issues there. And sometimes that's a stressful situation no matter what, and trying to communicate that both ways can be stressful. Okay. Anybody else? What was your last communication like with a teacher? Collaborative or stressful? Okay.
Collaborative.
Okay, Lane, go ahead. Tell me more about that. Sounds like that was a better experience. Haley said it didn't feel collaborative. We didn't feel heard. Okay, I'm glad to see that some of you are feeling like the communication's good. That's what we're aiming for, right?
Last time I had a meeting with my parents and a teacher, it did not go well because I was in elementary.
Okay, so
All
didn't
they
go
did was
well.
all
So,
they did was tell the bad things,
okay.
how horrible I was.
Okay, yeah. So sometimes we just have really bad experiences. So I'm really glad for the people that are saying we've never had issues. Um, but I know that there are some of us that have probably had issues for sure. Okay, granddaughter's daughter doesn't like talking on there. That can be a real issue as well, right? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. Now, being in this online setting, what causes you the most stress? School emails, because you get a lot of those, phone calls from the school, complaints from your student about school or not knowing how to do assignments, whatnot, or your role as a learning coach. What stresses you out the most?
For me, for my parents, it's probably complaints because I complain a lot.
So
'Cause I'm like,
Amelia's here as a student and she's saying she complains.
yeah, because I'm like about to be 2 assignments behind in history.
Okay. Okay, what else?
Mainly just trying to get the work done and submitted because oftentimes my work doesn't submit on the teacher side, so I often
Okay.
have to submit it 2 or 3 times.
So tech issues.
Yeah,
Okay, which tech is great when it works, not so great when it doesn't work.
yeah,
Okay, so phone calls can be stressful because you don't want to miss them, and emails when you have a minute to check. And I know that we do get bombarded with emails. Sometimes it's hard to keep up, especially because that seems to be like the most convenient way in an online school to communicate, right? Is through email. Okay. And again, I know, like I said, there was quite a few of you that this is your first month. So even just getting into the new transition and in the groove of things can be tough as well. Yep, carry complaints from students. So all of those things we're going to talk a little bit about today. Because like I said, as a learning coach, it changes your role. Even as a parent, like I said, I have three kids, 23, 19, and 14. So two of the three have made it through school so far, but not without some of those growing pains for sure. Oh, Jen, so issues with emails not being responded to for a week, which is a long time. Okay, that's an issue as well, too. Okay, so we'll talk about how to handle some of those situations. So, I want to talk a little bit about what I see is the four biggest hold up in communication, especially in our online setting. Number one is tone misinterpretation. The hardest part when we're communicating via email, via text message, um, sometimes over phone calls, but not quite as much, is we're not able to interpret the tone. If I type something in the chat today, actually, there's a perfect example right now. Jen just typed in the chat, spoke with the principal today. Do
Stop.
we know how how that went and what Jen's experience was? We could take that as positive. We could take that as negative. We could take that as neutral, but we don't know. So that tone misinterpretation is really hard. What is interesting with this training, as well as I actually had this training with some of the teachers last week and have the training with some more teachers this week. And it's interesting as we reflect as teachers as our tone, what we think is appropriate, sometimes we forget can be taken in the wrong way or the wrong tone, vice versa as parents as well. Second thing is emotional reactivity. Now, if you get an email or a call, like a voicemail or a text from the teacher that says, hey, your student is failing X, Y, and Z, they haven't logged in for so many days. Do you ever get emotionally reactive to those types of things? Okay. Yes, to your child for sure. That mama bear, papa bear kind of comes out in you sometimes. So I was reminded of an experience last week. I had my daughter came home from school and they are on a trimester system. And it was the first day of the trimester. And she said, Mom, I went to go into the class and the teacher told me and three of my other friends, leave. You're not coming in here. I'm not dealing with you. Go to the counselor and change your schedule. And being in coming, like I said, coming from an educator role, also coming from the parent role, I was really bugged at this, thinking, what's going on, right? But I took a minute to get it all together. Um, and granted, it was the end of the day, so I couldn't go right into the school and talk to the principal. But that emotional reactivity got me, and I had to catch myself and say, all right, I got to calm down for a second and look at this without being emotionally charged and figure out what's going on. Long story short, there was a lot to the story. Was it handled inappropriately in some ways? Yes. Was there more to the story once I found out? Yes. My concern also was, well, if my student is being rotten in class or something's going on, I need to know, but I hadn't heard anything at that point. So that emotional reactivity definitely gets us as parents sometimes. All right. Students as the middle messenger. Now, this can happen in online school, but sometimes not as much because you're usually privy to what's going on in communications. But this may have happened in brick and mortar school, but it's not to say that it can't happen here. How many times have we heard our students say, I got all my work done, there's nothing to do. But then the teacher calls and says, hey, your student's missing last week's assignments.
That's where my grandson's at right now.
Okay,
And
so
trying to get him to get caught up, but he's like, later. I could do it later. So what should I do, or what could I do better to make sure that he's getting it done?
yes, so we're going to talk about that. And I think this is a perfect example of where it's so important for you as the parent and learning coach to use that opportunity to communicate with the teacher and say, hey, my student's saying that everything's done, or I can wait, or whatever the answer is, or sometimes excuse. And so that you have that firsthand, right? And sometimes, you do have access as learning coaches to see into their grade books and see directly, but sometimes that can be confusing. So all of those different things. So yes, this is one common thing that we see a lot. So the students is a middle messenger. And again, this is going to be a time for you to be able to communicate with your student as well on how are we going to change this so that we can help you be successful in the school setting. Okay. And then number 4, stress on both sides. We know that life can be stressful on both sides. And so sometimes if we react and respond in a stressful time, things don't come out well. So one thing I like to share in these workshops are ways that we can easily communicate with teachers. And I like to remind this or to use this as the CLEAR method. I actually don't think this is obviously geared towards communicating with our teachers and other staff members, but this can be used in any type of communication with any person really. But this idea of the CLEAR framework is clarify the message. So if you get a message from the teacher, or even if you get a message from your student that says, "Hey, I did this," and you're thinking, "Wait, I'm still confused," we need to clarify and ask questions, see what more we're missing. Sometimes it might seem like a direct message that is self-explanatory, but many times it's not, right? If the teacher says, "Hey, you can easily check your student's progress in the grade book," well, you haven't done that very often. So sometimes what may seem easy for the teacher because they work in and day out isn't so easy for you. So even asking for clarifications like, "Hey, I still new at this. Can you send me some like your procedure on how to do this?" That's helpful. Asking clarifications that way. Leading with respect. So this is a big one because as we lead with respect, it always goes better than if we just jump right into things, right? Excuse me. So an example, even when you're frustrated, sometimes you can say things like, "I appreciate your help with this. I understand you're trying all of these different things," because even as an online teacher, I know that you as a parent are trying too. You wouldn't have your student here trying this option if you didn't care and you weren't trying. So again, lead with respect. Okay, the E stands for express curiosity. So this goes back to my example of my daughter saying, I went into the principal and I said, "Is there something I'm missing? Is my daughter acting out at school and I just haven't heard from the teacher? I'm trying to better understand the situation of why she got kicked out of class." Okay, so is there something that I may not be seeing? Because we know that that can be the case at times. Okay, acknowledging effort, again, just saying an easy thank you, or "Thank you for taking the time," or "Thank you for helping me," things like this. And finally, the R, respond calmly. So never respond to those emails when you're fired up. At least take a 10-minute break. I always say, write the email out. A lot of times I think it's good for you to get out your frustrations, but don't hit send. Write it out. Let it sit for 10 minutes at least. Go back and read it again. And usually at that point, you've calmed down and either the email's still okay and you can send, or more likely what happens is you got everything out and then you can go back, refine, and then send. So as you think about this CLEAR framework, it just takes a few minutes to just catch yourself in it, think through it, and then move forward. Because like I said, we can respond very quickly. We can respond out of emotions and then we quickly regret that. And it's hard to kind of take back that first impression with anybody that we're communicating with, right? So I want to do just a couple of quick examples just so we can see how some of these things work. So I just want you to think about this. If a parent sends to their teacher, "My daughter says she's completed everything. I don't understand why her grade dropped." How could there be some assumptions, or what could be the assumptions from the teacher on this end? Does the teacher know how you actually feel as a parent?
No, they don't.
They don't, right? Because there's not even an address to like, Dear Mrs. Lindsay. Um, there's nothing like that. So could the parent be angry? They could
Yeah.
be. Could the parent just be asking a simple question and have no emotions tied to it?
Yes.
Possibly, yeah, for sure. Um, could the parent just be really frustrated because they're trying to get to the real story of what's happening?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very well could be too, right? So there can be some really common assumptions. So maybe the teacher graded something wrong, and the teacher makes mistakes. We are human. Okay. The teacher could dislike the student. That's a reality. Doesn't mean that it's true, but it could be. The assignment was unclear. That could happen very well too, right? The directions were unclear. Maybe this is something that they worked on in a live class and your student missed it or something. But I want you to think about how would you react to this, and how could we make this email a little bit better as a parent writing to a teacher? How would any of you guys change this? Whoops. Any ideas? What would you do different?
I feel like I would have wrote it just like that,
Okay.
honestly.
Okay. Okay. So somebody said the teacher needs to answer the question and help out with the homework and help the parent. Okay. Add a greeting would be helpful, right? And an explanation. Or
Yeah.
even giving like I'm not seeing anything in the grade book, or if there's a specific assignment. Yeah, good. Ask for the or address a specific teacher, ask clarifying questions, even just changing it just a little bit. So here's like maybe an example of what you could do. This doesn't have to be perfect.
Also, using please and thank you goes a long ways.
Yes, exactly. Please and thank you do go a long way. So, hi, we'll say Mrs. Lindsay. I noticed my daughter's grade changed and wanted to better understand how participation or assignments are being measured. Could you help me see where she may have missed something so we can support her at home? Thank you for your help. Yes, Jessica, help me understand. How is that one taken versus the last one?
I would have
A
went with
lot
that
more
one.
politely.
Okay, a lot more friendly, maybe not feeling like you're under attack or something, right? And like I said, I don't even know if some teachers, I'm not sure as a teacher I would take that last email as an attack per se. I would just have some questions. And as a teacher, I would probably have to follow up with some questions as well and say, um, what can I, or what assignment are you referring to? What, yeah, finding a solution. So things like that. So again, please and thank you. Using a greeting, um, all of those things are going to help a little bit. Yep, more of the collaborative communication instead of being more of like the hostile situation. And again, sometimes it can just be tough because we just send things off. And again, there may not even be any emotion attached to it, but it's that two-way communication that makes it hard on how things can be interpreted. Okay, how do you react to this? Your student comes to you and says, my teacher hates me. Automatically, what do? The mama and papa bears sometimes get going, right? I know that I've found myself as a parent in this situation more than once.
Go to the school next morning and find out what's going on.
Okay. Anybody else have any other ideas? Okay, Jessica, tell me more about it. Go ahead.
I would ask the kid, my child, why he feels that way. What would the reasons be?
Okay.
And then go talk to the teacher.
Sometimes you need more clarification from your student, right? Why do you feel that way?
Yes.
Tell me exactly what's going on. right? And if they give you lots of answers that still don't add up, then yes, for sure, you're going to be going to the school or making a phone call or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So I think those are all things that are very good. And again, gives you a little bit of time to say, let me look at the whole picture here. Let me get more answers. Let me ask you more questions if I need that. And then I can kind of move forward from there instead of just your student comes home, Mrs. Lindsay hates me. And then you're just, I'm Michael, I'm going to use you as an example. You just shoot off an email that says, why do you hate my kid? What he's never done anything to you, blah, 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 right?
Right.
When I would come back probably and say, I don't hate your son because I honestly, as a teacher in all my years, can never say I hated a student. I may have got frustrated with certain students, but I've never, my job has always been that I want to help students in the best way possible. So making sure that we do that. So this phrase here, let's figure out what might be happening. Could your student just be having a bad day? Could they have had a bad session with their teacher? What maybe they just didn't understand. Maybe their questions weren't answered completely and they were feeling frustrated. So let's figure out what's happening and then we can address the situation. Does that mean that teachers aren't in the wrong at times?
No.
No.
Definitely not, right? So I would always say if you have concerns, you can reach out to the teacher and also to administration if you need to. That is definitely not inappropriate. But it always is better if you can figure out what's going on. Jessica, I love that. Sometimes this is an opportunity to teach your child how to manage difficult relationships. And that is so true. That is something that I feel like, as we work with students, it's just a life skill that they have to learn how to deal with, right? And they may never mesh well with that teacher, but they can learn how to work through some of those hard relationships as well. All right, so you send this email to your teacher when you're frustrated. Actually, you know what? I'm going to skip over this one because we're getting short on time. Okay, this is one we need to talk about. Your student says, I'm not doing this homework. You can't make me. How do you react?
My mom usually just says, "Well, then just get it done, and so you can just do whatever you want. Because if you do that, you can do what you want. You can play video games with your friends, or go work on your derby car."
Okay, so do you have consequences if you don't complete your assignments, Lane?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, consequences. Okay, what else? Let me hear from some parents. How do you handle this?
Consequences, yes, and rewards if they do it without having issues.
Rewards are also great consequences to use, right?
Yeah.
Helps build that motivation.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the hardest parts of being a learning coach. And in all of my years that I've been in online learning, this is where
See,
parents struggle the most because all of a sudden you're not only a parent, but now you're into the classroom as well and having to follow through with some of these consequences that can be really hard. So, yes, that negative consequence of if you don't do something, then what's that consequence? The positive consequences of rewards. And remember, the teachers are also there to help as well. But part of what I find oftentimes when a student is not doing this homework, usually there's some level of frustration. Maybe they need some help, even just reading through and helping to understand what needs to be done. Oftentimes, we find if students fall behind, it gets overwhelming to try to figure out a way to get caught back up. So instead of being able to do that, this is when students start shutting down and saying, I'm not doing it. You can't make me, right? So sometimes that breaking it down into smaller steps makes that super manageable. Okay. So somebody said have tried to help her find it and it's not there. Are you talking about motivation or just assignments in general? Okay. Yeah, and we just ask him why, and he almost always chooses to do the work. I think that's true too. So oftentimes, I think asking more clarification of why don't we want to do this work? Is it because you're not understanding? Is it because you're overwhelmed? All of those different things. And if you can't find the work, then that's where you reach out to the teacher and say, "Hey, we really are looking for this and we can't find it. Can you help us?" And
You guys
that's
are awesome with helping with that because that's how I was with my grandson. We've been falling behind, and because this is very new to us, and he's just refusing, and I'm trying to get ways to figure out why. I was like, "This is what you wanted. You didn't want to be in the public school anymore because of the teachers and the kids and the bullying, and now I've gotten you here. Now you need to work with me."
yes. Yes. And honestly, that is one of the biggest things. A lot of times students need that extra support, especially when they're getting started. So that might require you to sit down and work with them, just to kind of help guide them a little bit. I know every situation's a little bit different, especially with older kids versus younger kids. I know there's a lot of older kids that are working independently while their parents are gone. But I always tell parents, hey, you can take 5 minutes when you get home from work and just say, hey, let's check and make sure you got everything done. Really, the biggest thing is just making sure that number one, they've got a really good place to work. I think setting up a schedule that works best for them is super helpful, whether that's an actual checklist that you cross things off, or whether that is like a digital calendar. But trying to find what works best for your student, and this is going to take a little bit of time, especially as you're new here, because it takes a little bit of time to get to know your student, but that's setting them up for success and also having consequences for the good things they do and maybe the things that they choose not to do is so crucial. One of my favorite quotes, as a life coach in general, is choose your hard, right? So it's hard to be a learning coach and to keep the students accountable, but it's also hard when students don't have accountability and then they fall behind and maybe they fail or all of those different things. So yeah. And Amelia says sometimes it ends up in a yelling match, and sometimes it does. But that's where, again, as parents, we've got to figure that out. What works, what doesn't work. I'm guessing most of you are here for a reason because brick and mortar wasn't the best setting for your student. And this setting really does give lots of opportunities. So, really focusing with your student on that. And maybe that's one thing you bring up. Why are we at this school? Why do you want to be here? Or why do you not want to be here? And then moving off of that. Yes, timers are great. I think that is another thing that working in those smaller increments is super helpful, right? Or saying, hey, let's get this one assignment done, then take a break. It can be overwhelming when you're stuck to a computer all day or feel like you have to be, and that should not be what your student is doing. So finding some of those things, and we'll talk more about that as well at our next meeting when we talk about motivation and some of those tips and tricks and how that works, because it really is finding what motivates, and we have to make sure that our students are feeling intrinsically like they're getting something from this or they shut down, right? And once they start seeing those wins build up, then they're going to get in that better habit of wanting to keep doing their work. All right. So, as we start wrapping up, modeling communication is huge. As the adult, your student is watching you model in so many different aspects of life, but especially in communication. So, if as a parent you're constantly blaming, whether it's teachers, all of those things, and I'm not saying, again, that's the caveat that not all teachers are perfect, right? But if it's always just the teacher's problem, um, and we're not taking personal accountability for maybe some of our actions, that can be modeled. reacting emotionally quickly, escalating quickly, okay, students will repeat those behaviors. But as we model some of those things like curiosity and getting clear on things like, hey, I am, I just want to know why do you think the teacher hates you? Why are you not wanting to do your schoolwork? And working through those calmly ends up with our communication being way more productive in the long term than if we just blow up and react. I think it was Amelia that said that we always end up in shouting matches, and that can happen at times. But the more we work through some of these things, hopefully we can avoid some of those shouting matches. So as we end tonight, I just want you to think and reflect on your communication. If there's things that you can do better, if there's things that now you look back and think, maybe I need to reach out to this teacher and address this because I'm confused on what the teacher actually meant. If you are trying to reach a teacher and you can't get a hold of her or him, then maybe that warrants I need to reach out to the principal or whatnot. But really, our goal as a school and as you as parents is to create this place that is safe for our students and to give them the best learning environment possible. Like I said, I am guessing that you brought your students here to this school for a reason. And so, what is your reason, and how can we all work together to make that the most successful place possible? All right. I went 6 minutes over. Hopefully that was okay with you guys. Do you guys have any questions, final comments, anything that I can help you with as we wrap up tonight?
I want to say thank you for everything you've done so far.
Well, I appreciate that. I am so happy to be here with you guys, and I hope that you find these sessions helpful. The next session is going to be on March 24th. We're going to talk about motivation for your students, especially motivation as they enter testing season. I know that's not always the favorite time of the year, but just an important time of the year that, again, we want to try to make that as smooth for everybody as possible. So, okay, well, I will stick around for a few minutes. I appreciate you guys for coming and for participating. That makes my part of this so much easier. And yes, I look forward to seeing you guys back here in a couple weeks, and have a great rest of your night.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.